Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer. I was thinking about this a little bit earlier today as I was on my third or fourth Zoom call for the day. That I started in marketing back pre internet days. In the 1990s, I was in the wine business. I would get on a plane. I would go to Europe. I would have meetings there. I'd come back to New York City, and then fast forward to, I don't know, 2015, 2016, I had my first international video call with a client, and I've been doing it like that ever since. And there's something that is so accessible across the globe these days that really it has shifted a lot in the time that I've been in business. And yet others are I want to say born into this new environment where, of course, we have a reach across the globe so instantly that we can collaborate with others in other parts of the world and also be inspired by creativity and art forms and culture from around the world as well. And that, to a certain extent, is the story of today's guest and the work that he does with his colleagues on multiple continents. So, we're going to talk a little bit about that, as well as sort of the entrepreneurial journey that he's had in the marketing world. Damiano Raveenthiran, I didn't get that right, and I even practiced it before I hit record, but welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So we'll get your name pronounced properly now because you're gonna do it.
Yeah, it's Raveenthiran. It's
Okay.
Damiano Raveenthiran. You got it.
So, Damiano, I was super close. Anyway, I heard you say in a video on LinkedIn, and you've been doing a lot of video posts on LinkedIn recently. You talked a little bit about your background. You have now, I think, run three different creative agencies,
Hmm.
and the stuff that you're doing. Just looking at your current website is really exciting, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about the creativity that exists in the world that you operate in. But you actually started this a long, long time ago when you were 13 years old. I heard you say in a video, you started designing websites.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I got my first computer when I was 12, and when I was 13, I really got into just trying to understand how this thing called the internet worked, and basically started building websites when I was 13 years old. So it was really interesting to just learn to code and learn to do different things. Back then, it was all about tables and stuff like that. That is no longer relevant today.
Yep.
But yeah, that eventually led me into seeing what we could do with websites. Somehow I got here.
Somehow, and I want to talk a little bit about that because you've done sort of the natural progression, right?
Mhm.
You have a skill set. You then find that there's people who can benefit from that. You offer services, and then you graduate from doing that maybe independently. I noticed, looking at your background, you were offering services, on Fiverr at one point, and then
Yeah.
you graduate to a point where you're working in some major environments doing big projects. So how do you get from that 13-year-old who is doing that old school coding stuff, I don't even know what tables are, to where you are today working with big well-known international brands and on new progressive technologies like Web3?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it all started with me wanting to do this full time. So, for the longest time, I didn't think this was a career path for me. I wasn't very book smart when I was a child. So even going through school, I couldn't get into computer science programs, even though I was pretty good at building websites and doing all that. And so, yeah, after I got out of school, I started working in the field that I actually graduated in, which was political science. Hated it, absolutely hated it. And then it was just out of a fluke where I was like, well, I always did have this passion for building sites. Maybe I can do this. And everything started with me originally going to Toronto. So I live in Montreal. Decided to move to a bigger city in my 20s. So I moved to Toronto, and I remember I moved to Toronto. I had $400 in the bank. Like after I had paid my rent, didn't have a job, and I was like, okay, I need to find some sort of income. I went to a pharmacy. They interviewed me. They were like, "Yeah, we'll give you a job for like $10 an hour." And I remember being like, "Okay, that's not enough for me to pay the rent." So I felt really defeated. And that day, I don't know, something came onto me, and I was like, "Okay, well, I'm just gonna go to Staples and print like 100 resumes and walk down the biggest street in Toronto, walk into every single store, and just ask them if they needed somebody to build them a website." And that's basically how I got my first client. That client paid me $60,000 for their website. So it was the first time that I was making that kind of money. I was 24 years old, and then from that point on, I was like, wow, okay, I think I can do this. I think this is something that I would like to work with more clients on. Started my freelancing career very much 10 years ago. Found Fiverr, which is the world's largest freelancing marketplace. Joined the marketplace. At first, I didn't really know what I was doing, so I was offering websites for as low as like $30 just to get my name out there. But very quickly, I realized that Fiverr is actually a huge, huge platform for people that can actually thrive on it. And that, I think at the time there was like 33 million transactions going on Fiverr every single day. And so I started working with small clients. Small clients were happy. They left 5-star reviews. Then I graduated on Fiverr, made it to medium-sized businesses, and then from that I got my first large enterprise deal, which ended up being a $4 million deal, which completely changed my life. And from that moment on, I just started working with enterprise.
That's a pretty amazing trajectory going, especially the Fiverr transition from
Yeah.
different sort of size organizations. And I would never expect, that you would start a relationship on Fiverr that would end up with a relationship, um, that would result in a $4 million deal. But I imagine that the type of interaction that you had with those different clients and the level of sophistication that you had to show up with had to change as well over time, and you probably did a lot of learning on the spot kind of stuff. And so these days you are working with major clients, you're leading a large team, and you are even, coaching folks in leadership and entrepreneurship as well. So I imagine that there's a lot of great stories and probably, lessons learned over time that inform a lot of what you do now.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got it right. Like I had imposter syndrome for a very long time as I was sort of moving up the ladder on the clients that I was working with. I remember the when I got the $4 million client, it was a video game company called Electronic Arts. I can say it now. I don't have that company anymore. But it was Electronic Arts, and I remember the first time that I had a call with them. I was at a conference in Vegas, and it was the very first conference that I've ever been to in business in general. I had never been to a conference before. I was in my Airbnb, sitting on my bed, taking this call, and I remember when the Zoom call opened, there was 25 people around the boardroom,
Wow.
ready to talk to me, and I was in a position where I didn't even have the development talent needed to work on that project. But I was like, hey, I'm just gonna try to close it, and if I close it, then I can figure out the delivery afterwards, which is
Mhm.
exactly what I did. And client was super happy. We ended up working with them for 4 years. So it ended up okay, but it was a it was a big fake it till you make it moment
Yeah.
at that point for sure. And I've had to live that like throughout the entire way while I was sort of growing. But eventually, you do make it. You fake it until you do make it.
Well, we talk a lot about entrepreneurship on this show through the lens of
Hmm.
things like Michael Gerber and the E Myth, right, where he teaches this idea of a lot of people start in a business because they're really good at something, and they don't ever learn how to become a business owner, right? How to
Hmm.
work on the business instead of in the business was a phrase that he coined. You've clearly had to do that, right? You've graduated from being the doer to being the leader of teams and organizations, and maybe obviously there's projects in between being
Hmm.
a leader of an organization. How did you learn that stuff?
Honestly, it might seem silly, but while I was in school, I had a part-time job at a pharmacy, and I was always kind of like lazy, so I didn't want to be at the bottom, and so I would always try to get a promotion so that I could become the manager, so that I could just chill while other people
Yeah.
would do the work. And so for a good like 10 years of my life, I was managing pharmacies and I was managing teams with like sometimes like upwards of like 40 people working in these pharmacies.
Mm,
And I was like, I was young, I was like 19, 20 years old, and they would just like let me do that. That definitely had a huge impact on me because I learned to manage people at a very young age. And so when I started my business, I just had a natural proclivity to go towards that. Once I realized that my own technical skills were reaching a limit and that the clients were asking for things that I was not an expert in, that's where I started bringing in experts, and then eventually I started outsourcing all of the work to those experts.
mhm.
So
You're
yeah,
you're one of these folks who have a lot of slashes in your title, particularly when you see the description on LinkedIn. You do a lot of things. You wear a lot of hats, right?
yeah.
You're mentoring and training people. You're running a business. You also position yourself as an investor. I've always been curious about what that means to people when they include that in their description. Where, like, how, what is your identity when you wake up in the morning and you say, this is who I am or what I do?
I mean, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I feel like for a very long time, I didn't know what my thing was, and I remember feeling like that. I don't know, David, if you remember feeling like that, but everyone feels like that at some point in their lives where they don't know what their thing is, and you're really searching and you can't figure it out, and maybe you need more exposure to things. When I was 24 years old, I found entrepreneurship, and I'm so grateful that I found that because it's my passion, and I live it and I breathe it, and that's what I live to do. That's what I'm gonna die doing. So, um, like if somebody asks me what I do, that's what I do. I'm an entrepreneur through and through, and the way that looks, it might have changed over the years.
Mhm.
But I basically find opportunities to grow my skills in business and to grow my skills in yeah, in marketing and all of that. That's kind of what I work on.
I think I would agree with you. I mean, that's sort of been my experiences. I went from employment to being forced into accidental entrepreneurship, and it's stuck ever since. And I think that the excitement of not just running the business but also being able to take others along on the journey and say, here's
Yeah,
some lessons I've learned. And so I mentioned to you before we hit record, I built an agency that turned into a marketing strategy consultancy, and then we started licensing the idea of how to be a consultant around strategy and planning to traditional marketing agencies. And we were in that business for quite a while, and I have lots of people we've licensed that to. Over time, though, I realized, okay, this is only resonating with a certain number of people who are willing to come along on the journey. Let's get back to the basics of actually running and supporting businesses. Where do you find that you get the most excitement out of the time that you're spending with what types of clients? I find that it's the consulting opportunities that I get most excited about because I'm always learning something new. Where's that for you?
yeah, it's a good question. I've actually been contemplating this like recently because I don't know if you know the concept of the ikigai
Oh
in
yeah.
Japanese, right? Where it's the Venn diagram between what you love doing, what you're good at, and what you can get paid for, and what the world needs. And I was thinking of my own ikigai, and I was like, well, I think my ikigai is really around coaching and mentoring people for sure. Really being able to take someone from a point of like in some cases similar to where I was 10 years ago, and to really be that support that brings them forward. Um, and and I was contemplating whether running a marketing agency really aligns with that, and I did come to the conclusion that it does because I do actually do a lot of coaching and a lot of mentoring with my team. I have a sales team of 7 people right now who are great, and then within the agency itself we're 31, and a lot of them come to me for advice and coaching, and I also coach. I've coached over 700 people in the last 10 years,
Mm.
in different groups, different masterminds, and things like that. And so I've really found that that's where I shine the most, and I love being able to unblock somebody, just like the other people did for me. I think over the last I calculated the other day, and over the last 10 years, I spent over $1 million on like mentors and coaches and
Yeah.
just learning stuff for my own growth, um, just from all sorts of experts, and so. I'm happy I know how much value I got from that, and so I'm happy to be able to give that value back to other people.
In your agency, Brand Butter is the
Hmm.
agency. You work in a few different verticals, e-commerce. You're working in Web3. I mentioned a little while
Hmm.
ago. The other thing that you list on the website is the gambling industry. And you
Hmm.
just mentioned a moment ago, you have a fairly large team, which is a virtual team, at least for you. They're divided between two locations. Maybe you have
Yeah.
two offices. But talk a little bit about the type of work you're doing and what it means to be managing a team that is operating internationally in both Canada and in Spain, or should I say
Yeah.
Catalonia? I want to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, like, so brand butter, what we specialize in is what we call radical marketing. So we try to look at a marketing problem from a different angle. And what we really love doing, our number one sort of service is basically creating these large marketing stunts that make advertising history. So brands will usually come to us because they have a certain budget. They want to do a large brand awareness campaign to really get known and to make advertising history. As we say, it could be a Super Bowl ad. It could be, like we worked with Game of Thrones, for example, on the release of their new series. Um, and just like doing a stunt in real life most of the time, with a digital component that gets a lot of earned media and a lot of PR. So we love doing that. The reason why we have the gambling industry as one of our main verticals is actually because the gambling vertical is it's a high risk vertical. So you cannot use normal marketing techniques to market those businesses, even though they're multi-billion-dollar businesses. You can't buy Facebook ads. You can't do, just a landing page and drive traffic to it. SEO is also sort of a challenge there, and so getting them earned media and getting them traffic from unconventional places is interesting. And so
Mhm.
we love doing that kind of stuff. Our client base is international, so we have clients here in North America, and we also have a lot of clients in Europe, which is why we decided to basically split the team in two. So we have an office in Barcelona, and one here in Montreal. Um, we found that Barcelona has amazing, amazing creative talent, and being a creative agency, that was really, really important for us. Especially on the design side, we do tons and tons of design here, and one of the jokes that we have around the office is that you can go to Barcelona and kick over a garbage can, and designers will come out of it because there's just so much design
Yeah.
talent there. And people don't realize it, but some of the best design universities in Europe are actually in Barcelona. And so that's why we decided to set up our office there and to hire our delivery team here there. Whereas here it's a lot of the executives are here, some of our project managers are here. So we've really split it up depending on what people do, and things like that.
So obviously that's the benefits. Are there challenges? I imagine working multiple time zones, different continents.
I mean, I'm sure there are. I guess for me, because I've done it my entire career, it's
Mhm.
a little bit like it's second nature. I'm very used to, starting work at 9 and, having breaks throughout the day and then just like working again at 9. It's like totally normal. And so, I like the fact that when I wake up, there's a bunch of work that's already been completed because they've done it in Europe. And so we have a little bit of overlap there. So for me, it's not really that challenging because our system is already set up for that, and our processes are set up for that. And our team, we always make sure that there is like quite a bit of overlap. There's also, like it's between Montreal and Barcelona, which is a 6 hour time difference. I think there will be a much bigger challenge if we were on the West Coast, for example.
Yeah.
It's very difficult for us to work with people on the West Coast. If we were in Asia, it would be even more difficult. So we don't, yeah, we have a certain time zone difference that we're comfortable with, and we stick within that because our processes can handle it.
We're covering a lot of ground here, and because you work in such a specialized area of marketing, I want to spend the rest of the time, really talking about that. The big impression, big stunt is being the jumping off point for something that gets
Hmm.
shared and talked about and so much else, is not the only marketing that any of these clients are likely doing. And so I'm
Yeah.
I'm curious, how do you collaborate, cooperate with the other things that are happening in the marketing world for those clients? Like where does that where do you enter into the strategy and the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question. So any client that wants to work with us, we're a little bit different than other agencies. A lot of other creative agencies will usually come up with ideas and then go up to clients and pitch them the ideas and see which ones they want to take. We work a little bit differently. We need our clients to understand that we are the brand awareness and virality people. If they want to do a really large stunt that gets a lot of people talking about their brand, that's what we're here for. And for us to be able to do that, we need to understand what their entire marketing department is doing.
Hmm.
And so usually when a client wants to work with us, they have to go through our solutions engineering team. We will sit down with all of the stakeholders and we'll basically spend a good month just finding out exactly what the brand is trying to achieve and what the initiatives that they have are. From that point on, then our team will meet internally and then we will come up with a plan and a strategy. That plan and strategy is different depending on the business. So in some cases, they might really be in a position where they've been trying to think of some marketing stunts that they can do. Their internal team can't figure it out, and so we're kind of like the team that comes there and we're like, okay, we'll help you do that. In other cases, they already have a pretty good idea of what they want to do, but they don't have the manpower to execute it, and so we can just come in and support them in that sense. So it really depends, but the we spend a lot of time on really integrating ourselves within the brand itself. And I found over the years as an agency owner that this is the best way of doing things because it builds trust, it builds familiarities, our teams get to know each other, and we are completely aligned on what we want to achieve, bringing up the success rate of the project by upwards of 95%. So,
I, I love how you introduce this idea being different from other agencies. You know, there's uh, the old school Madison Avenue concept of everybody going and pitching, you know,
mhm,
when a contract is open or there's an opportunity open or somebody a business is shopping, and then there's always the concern about, all right, are they going to steal our idea and take it down the street and have somebody else execute on it? You've claimed a position here, which is first, we only do this narrow thing. Second, in order to work with us before we have the idea of what we're going to do, we're going to embed ourselves in your environment for a month, right? So
yeah,
can you talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously there's great strength in that positioning. You have I think you said a 9-person sales team. how does
yeah,
how
seven,
does
yeah.
that how does that pitch go over? Like what how do you approach a business, and what is it that you're dangling in front of them that gets them to say, yes, I'd love to work with you?
So one of the things that I know how to do really well is how to sell my service. I know how to sell my service super well. And so by the time that I get them into the process, I've already built enough trust and familiarity for them to say yes. And so we have an entire methodology that we use within our sales team that I've actually learned by hiring a former CIA agent
Hmm.
who taught me how to build trust and familiarity to basically get whatever you want out of like a lead. And so we use these methodologies to basically get us to that point. And so, some of the leads that we work with, they're like, 4 to 6 million dollar activations that we're doing in some cases. Well, it takes us 14 months to close that client.
Sure.
But what we're doing in that 14 months is, we're taking them out to dinner. We're really getting to know them. They're getting to know us. There's familiarity and trust being built. There's synergies being built. We go as far as taking them out to conferences, and we host parties at really large conferences where we just had one in Budapest for a gambling conference where we had like 600 people attend,
Hmm.
and there were some of the largest online casinos in the world. Um, and so we build a lot of trust, and we know when the time is right for us to come in and to really be able to be like, okay, yeah, I think it's time that we work together. So by that time where we're like, yeah, if you want to work with us, we need to completely embed ourselves within your business. They're already on board, because we've done so much back end work
Yep.
to actually make that happen. So the way that we sell and the way that our sales team sells is very much on an account basis. So it's all account based marketing.
Hmm.
But it's very strategic. It's very methodological in how we do it with touch points and all of that.
And I love the fact that you said it was informed by, informed is an interesting word to have chosen there. A CIA agent, or somebody who worked with the CIA, who understands the psychology behind
Yeah,
the interaction and how you build trust.
yeah,
Probably the most famous person, I think it was FBI, was Chris Voss, who talks about
yeah,
this quite a bit.
absolutely.
And there's other folks who are. I just I just picked up my latest. It's right behind me here. Negotiation tactics pip decks, and this was developed by, I think, an MI5 negotiator,
Hmm.
and so it's useful to think about how do we get. And this goes back to, I think, the banner that's under your name. Think outside the box in terms of what is inspiring us to do the things that we do, right? Most people wouldn't say, I'm going to go to somebody who's worked in espionage or the spy world to train my sales team or develop my sales process. How did you, and clearly outside the box is what you do for a living.
Hmm. Hmm.
How did you come to this decision? I mean, what made you aware of this as a path to build out your entire sales process?
Honestly, it was just luck. I guess the one thing that I've always done is I've actually always given myself a KPI on the number of conversations that I have and the number of new people that I add to my network. I've been doing that for 10 years. And so I know exactly how many people I need to network with every single month for me to actually be able to have opportunities come my way. Along the way, one of the opportunities was for me to meet this person that used to work at the CIA. And then through that, he basically told me how some of the training at the CIA is conducted to really be able to teach operatives how to, um, how to build familiarity and trust. And then, back then I was really looking at getting better at sales and things like that. So I was in that mindset. And when I had the conversation with him, he was like, "Well, listen, if you want to hire me as a consultant, you can totally hire me and I'll teach you the stuff and we can apply it to sales because sales at the end of the day people buy from someone only because of two things is trust and familiarity. As
Mm,
long as you have those two things, the price doesn't matter and everything else doesn't really matter. It's just as long as you focus on those two things, you will get the sale.
yeah.
And so that's what he taught me to do. And in the last 10 years that translated in $15 million worth of deals that I closed and that my sales team it's even more than that. So it's it works like it works, and I've taught this model to sales teams as a consultant as well over many years.
I love it, and I love the fact that I mean, really what you're describing is just um, listening, being aware, connecting dots when when you're in a place, that maybe y- the person you're talking to doesn't seem like they would have some relevance to the world that you exist in, but you've paid attention enough to say, "Oh, this is interesting. This is what I do. This is what you do," and they were um, uh, also, I think, in that same zone, right, where they said, "How can we collaborate? How can we
Yeah.
share our skills to help one another?" So, yeah, brilliant. You have done a lot at a very young age, and a lot of time ahead of you, hopefully. What are you still trying to get to at this point?
Um, I mean, I definitely have some personal goals. I've had two exits in my career, which I'm very proud of. Both of them happened in the same year, which was 2023. One of them was for a larger agency, the last agency that I had for 7 years, and then the other one was a business that lasted like 6 months, and then
Mm,
it got bought. There's definitely certain skills that I want to get better at, and I do this for my own skills. I don't necessarily do this for the money or anything like that. I'm obsessed with becoming the best at this thing called business, or the best that I can be at least. And so yeah, just learning the mergers and acquisition game a lot better than what I know about it right now. Having that big exit at nine figures is definitely on my radar. Being able to invest in startups and empower people with projects that I really believe in. That's
mhm,
a really big one as well. So yeah, I'm sitting on a lot of boards right now. I started investing last year in a lot of other companies that are run by amazing, incredible people that I support, not just with my money, but with my time and whatever I can bring to them for them to succeed. And I just wanna continue doing that. To be honest, I'm in my element. My wife usually comes up to me, and sometimes I'm up till like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, just kind of working, and she's just like, "You're still working? Like, what's going on?" It's like, yeah, but it doesn't feel like work. Like I love what I do. So I like unless you stop me, I'm just gonna do this.
Well,
So it's good.
I can totally appreciate that. I find myself, passionately going down rabbit holes and doing the stuff that I do as well. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So, in addition to brand butter, and we'll make sure that folks know how to find out about what you are doing over there with your team and the work that you do with clients. You also mentioned that you connect with folks out there on the internet. Um, in at least one social channel. I found you on LinkedIn, but apparently, looking at your name here on the video, you also are on Instagram. What can folks expect to discover from you when they connect with you on social media?
I usually try to answer to anybody that reaches out to me, as many people as I can. So whether it's on LinkedIn or on Instagram, you're more than welcome to reach out to me at any time. You can find me on Instagram at Damiano R. I make a lot of video content about marketing and about entrepreneurship and about the journey. There's lots and lots of more videos coming out, and a couple of video series that I'm making. All of my friends are entrepreneurs, and some of these people are pretty ridiculous people. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna get them into some of my videos and make it entertaining over the next year. So
Well, I love it.
Instagram is where it's at for that.
We'll make sure to leave that link and all the others to Brand Butter and also LinkedIn in the show notes. Damiano, thank you so very much for joining me. This has been fascinating. Just like hearing your bio and all of those little stories and lessons woven in there, I think tremendous value. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Indeed. Folks, you've been listening to More Perfect Marketing. If you know somebody who could benefit from listening to the conversation you just heard, please share this with them. Till next time, I'm David Baer. Take care.